What are you doing? Whoa.
We are talking the micro-budgeted Apocalyptic 2077. This one is directed and written by, wait for it, Mark Hamill. No, not that Mark Hamill, I am sorry to say. A different one. There's a spelling difference, you see. Anyway, this, like I've said, is a very, very low budget, but very ambitious kind of apocalypse, post-apocalypse sci-fi comedy, I suppose you want to say. And it focuses this guy who is a kind of software engineer, some type of IT person, and he gets a job in a remote kind of weather monitoring station, and I believe it's meant to be in the Highlands of Scotland somewhere. And one Christmas, all of the crew end up going home, and he's pretty much left alone in this kind of like this isolated station to kind of look after the kind of the maintenance whilst the main kind of bulk of the crew is away for Christmas, and his only company is this kind of like this AI system. But whilst over this Christmas break there happens to be a world war and pretty much the majority of the planet is kind of like wiped off the face of the earth, most of humanity is gone. And this guy's none the wiser, all he kind of thinks it's some kind of earthquake. But obviously it cuts to pretty much 8 years later. We kind of see a montage of this time kind of going by and what he's doing, obviously getting to realise maybe what has happened. And he's kind of waiting for the radiation to subside and decides to venture out to try and find a safe haven and maybe the last kind of bastions of humanity. And then along the way, as you'd expect, he meets kind of various kind of Mad Max style people who are left after the kind of the apocalypse, cannibals, kind of like weird road warrior types and such, and goes on a bit of adventure with his kind of trusty AI in the form of a electric car. There you go. So let's talk about this movie. So the first thing here, this is so low budget. I have to really emphasise this before you watch this movie so you know what you are getting into. Do not be expecting any type of kind of production value here. It looks like it was made by a group of friends with minimal kind of acting experience or filmmaking experience. But I have to admire the sheer ambition that is put on display here, because this movie is not, I mean, I thought it was just going to be like a bottle movie where we see this one guy in this kind of room, and it starts out like it's going to be like that, and you know, we have the guy in this kind of control room, you know, with the kind of the apocalypse and stuff, but it doesn't really do that. This guy does go out and has a variety of different locales, and it actually tries to have a whole kind of world building you know, attempt with different kind of like factions involved in regards to the kind of the survivors and things like this, and all of, you know, there's lots of different stuff going on. There's the resistance. There seems to be 2 warring clans. So there's a lot of story ideas that are put in this movie. So the ambition is certainly there. Whether it obviously you want to watch that based on a practically no budget movie is another thing, but I have to applaud at least the ambition here to try something like this. So what works, first of all, outside of the initial ambition of the movie? There are some quite kind of fun homages to kind of like the post-apocalyptic kind of Mad Max kind of style movies that we've kind of seen before. Various kind of like, you know, cyberpunk tropes, and there is a little bit of an attempt at comedy here that sometimes works. Some of the jokes are kind of amusing, and it tries to kind of almost have sequences of various kind of different science fiction elements, as well as kind of like post-apocalyptic ones. We see this sort of cyberpunk and kind of Blade Runner-esque sort of style influences within certain scenes as well, which I thought was quite fun. Our main character, although not particularly a realistic portrayal, shall we say, is quite a likeable guy, and it's nice to see someone cast who I'm assuming is the, you know, maybe friends with the director. But nonetheless, I like the casting against type here. He isn't your leading man, you know, heroic type necessarily. He's not really a particularly good fighter or anything like that. He's just like another your average Joe, and I kind of quite liked that that portrayal to sort of have someone very much just your everyman kind of persona here. The movie as well, is quite short. It's actually quite punchy, and because this movie has a lots of different kind of, I mean, there's the scene at the beginning in the base goes on a little bit long, but it does have lots of location changes, so it doesn't particularly get, it's visually interesting, and it doesn't get particularly boring in regards to staying in any one place at any one time. Anyway, let's talk about maybe what doesn't work. So I feel the big thing is 99% of people who's going to put people off here is just a very low budget. I mean, I can't really demonstrate how low budget this movie is. It is more or less kind of like a Swede film, if you know what that is. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of green screen involved here in certain scenes, which kind of again looks a bit shonky. The acting is all kind of like, clearly people aren't actors by trade. You know, the kind of the landscapes, considering it's based, it's meant to have a nuclear war, looks absolutely fine. And kind of like the buildings and stuff like that. You know, there's no kind of like visual kind of ideas that this kind of like has been any type of you know, nuclear war or anything like that. There are a couple of scenes that are in run-down kind of buildings and stuff, but they just look like run-down buildings. And the movie kind of, like I've said, there is a scene, it's the first act, I suppose, in this kind of bunker, does drag a little bit. I thought it didn't need to be quite as long, especially our kind of our montage scene where he's kind of going through the years, and the attempt at comedy, although I feel some of the jokes hit here, some of them really don't, and it's a little bit kind of like, we're flogging a little bit of a dead horse for a little bit too long here. Yes, logic completely goes out the window. Yes, this guy's facial hair doesn't change within 8 years. Yes, the battery for the robot seems to be infinite for this kind of little like remote control car. Yeah, you can pick holes in kind of logic and stuff. And I feel the movie would, the people behind this movie would say, oh, we can't take it seriously. It's only a B movie, you know, it's not meant to be taken seriously. And that may be fair comment, but it's up to you as the viewer whether you can accept kind of like, kind of like, oh, don't take it too seriously, it's an excuse, just to kind of like wipe over the kind of any type of plot points that you know that may kind of bug you. The ending, I feel, sets it up for a sequel. There's lots of real world building here that ends up not really paying off, I will say, which to be honest with you, I don't like it when films kind of try to just make a series of films without really testing how this first one is going to be, and you never know whether you're going to make any kind of be as a sequel. So it doesn't stand on its own as a kind of a standalone story. It has somewhat of an open end, which I find a little frustrating. You can only really do that if you're a kind of a large budget movie where you know you're going to kind of be able to get like sequels made, like the Lord of the Rings, for example, things like that. Smaller films, I quite often see these things made and they're never kind of finished off, which then you always feel, why have I bothered watching it? So I would have liked to have had it, you know, more of a self-contained story. But the big thing, obviously, is the budget. Across the board, effects, acting, you know, everything here is extremely low budget. So you're going to have to ask yourself, is that something do you want to watch? I love the ambition, I really do. But can I recommend this as a good film? I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Now, that might seem low, because, considering I've kind of given it a high mark, but I have to consider, if you're going to watch this, what you would consider. And I don't think, if someone would buy this, they may be kind of like, that's so low budget. But there's certainly a lot of heart in this movie, and I can applaud that. So which is why I would give it, you know, maybe more than maybe I would otherwise. So 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.